and that there was media reporting about the majority of donations being made through crowdfunding site GiveSendGo, originating from donors outside of Canada.
Thursday in Ottawa, the Public Order Emergencies Commission kicked off. It's an inquiry into the actions of the government, or at least it's supposed to be. The inquiry is allegedly meant to examine whether or not the government was justified in invoking an anti-terrorism law called the Emergencies Act to euthanize peaceful anti-COVID mandate protests taking place in the nation's capital, but also in other locations across the country.
My choice! My body! My choice! Especially the choice for my child! My body, Trudeau, not yours. When your job and your livelihood is held against you for a shot, that is called medical coercion. You did not do it of free will. Stop mandates now.
Now, the convoy to Ottawa spent nearly 4 weeks completely peacefully demonstrating against lockdowns and vaccine passports. It evolved into a nearly month-long street party replete with bouncy castles, hot tubs, street hockey, concerts, and community outreach efforts like soup kitchens and food for the homeless. Rebel News, as we were for the convoy to Ottawa, will be there on the ground in Ottawa to cover the commission from the beginning to the end, because you just cannot trust the mainstream media. And in fact, that's what today's report is about. We've rented an Airbnb in Ottawa where we're sending a rotating cast of journalists to report on the Public Order Emergency Inquiry. Now, you can help support our efforts there at truckercommission.com. The mainstream media's reporting about the alleged foreign nature of the convoy funding was cited as a reason the Liberals invoked the Emergencies Act to arrest, detain, and seize the property, bank accounts, and assets of anti-Trudeau demonstrators. They were apparently foreign-funded operatives threatening the sovereignty of our great nation. I'm going to show you the lawyer for the commission reading into evidence yesterday the report on the explanation the government gives for their decision to invoke Section 58 of the Emergencies Act. Now, Section 58(1) requires that the government review any declaration of an emergency. Section 58 restrains the government. It lays down the very specific boxes that an emergency has to fit into before the government can invoke an anti-terrorism law on its citizens for political reasons. Now, one of those very specific reasons would be that the existing tools under the criminal code cannot effectively deal with the threat before them. And one of those threats would be the ability of Canada to preserve the sovereignty, security, or territorial integrity of Canada. So the existing tools would not be enough to stop this dangerous foreign-funded influence that is fomenting sedition in Ottawa. I want to point out that nobody's charged with sedition from Ottawa. They're only charged largely with mischief, which is an existing criminal code thing that police lay on people every single day.
Lies don't matter, Trudeau. They matter to us. We have come, Trudeau. We want freedom!
Now, the proof point that the government uses to say that this was a foreign-funded operation and that we needed all these additional tools to deal with it was laid out by a lawyer for the commission. Just watch.
And that there was media reporting about the majority of donations being made through crowdfunding site GiveSendGo, originating from donors outside of Canada.
Did you get that? Media reporting about GiveSendGo indicating that the majority of donations to the protest were made by donors outside of Canada. The problem is that's completely wrong. Don't take my word for it, though. Take the word of GiveSendGo at a House of Commons committee earlier this year. Listen.
You know, there was a news report that said that your campaign specifically to support the convoy protesters, the donations originated 60% from Canada and 37% from the United States. Is that correct?
Yes, that is an appropriate breakdown of funds.
In terms of the actual money raised, is that fairly consistent, 60-37, or what was the percentage-wise the origin of the funding?
Yes, that's going to be very consistent. Most of the donations were donations under $100, and it's pretty consistent across the board.
In terms of like around 60% of the total money raised was from Canada and 37% from the United States, just confirming that that's roughly consistent.
Yeah, I believe it to be. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I believe that to be the case. Yes.
Justin Trudeau's hand-picked government-funded media published fake news, and the government reacted to it, probably knowing full well that it was fake, but it gave the government the cover they needed to do what they wanted to do to their political enemies. Now, just to bolster this point, remember, CBC trotted out some expert to say that the convoy was Russian-backed. Remember this?
Canada's support of Ukraine in this current crisis with Russia. I don't know if it's far-fetched to ask, but there is concern that Russian actors could be continuing to fuel things as this protest grows, but perhaps even instigating it from the outset.
CBC had to retract that. Actually, they have retracted 2 stories along the same vein. And even the ombudsman of the CBC weighed in to say that the corporation was deeply embarrassed by the whole affair. But it's a neat little circuit that just got closed, isn't it? Report fake news, face no consequences. Government reacts to fake news, and I'm just speculating here, but I bet they absolutely knew it was fake news or didn't care that it was fake news because it justified what the government wanted to do. And then the media just sort of washes their hands of it and carries on. Oh, and collects that subsidy from Justin Trudeau to continue to perpetrate that vicious circle. Lives are ruined by fake news, but the media, they don't care. And the people whose lives are ruined are the ones who are paying the ruiners at the end of the day through government subsidies. The media should be deeply ashamed of themselves, but if they had any shame whatsoever, they wouldn't be taking a penny from the government, would they? You just can't trust the mainstream media, and that's why it's so important that Rebel News is on the ground in Ottawa for the Truckers Commission to support our independent journalism. Please visit truckercommission.com for Rebel News. I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. Rebel News is sending a rotating team of journalists to Ottawa to cover the Public Order Emergencies Inquiry from beginning to end. We're calling it the Truckers Commission because that's who the government is really trying to hold to account here. Instead of this being an effort in examining the government's actions, they're trying to turn the lens on the truckers, but we are going to do our best not to let them, to support our independent journalism on the ground in Ottawa. Please consider making a donation at truckercommission.com.